eating Nutella out of a jar.
Hello and welcome to InstaClinic. I'm Dr. Wassim Taktouk, and this is the InstaClinic about lockdown nutrition. Last week, the government announced that they were going to be increasing the lockdown by another 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks, I've always been eating and behaving like someone who's on holiday without any regard to my nutrition. So going forward for the next weeks, I want to improve my nutritional intake, because it's no secret that having a healthy diet means you're better off equipped to fight off infections, but also you're going to have better chances of recovery if you were to contract COVID-19. At the moment, we're facing unprecedented times. We're trying to limit the amount of times we're going to the supermarket. We're having difficulty getting supermarket delivery services to deliver food to us when we need it. We're trying to keep supermarkets free for vulnerable and for NHS workers, rightly so, in the mornings, but that does mean that sometimes when we get to supermarkets in the evening, we can't find some ingredients that we want. Baking powder. So I've enlisted Rosemary Ferguson. Rose is a friend and is 1/3 of 360 Skincare, alongside me and Teresa Tami. She's an exceptional and very knowledgeable nutritionist and is the founder of the 5-Day Plan. I subscribe to the 5-Day Plan every month. It's 5 days of breakfast, lunch and dinner delivered to your door the night before. Absolutely delicious, nutritionally complete, and just packed with anti-inflammatory ingredients that I just think it's like a spa for me, for my gut, and I just think it's like the time out that it deserves.
Hi Wassim, thank you for having me on your InstaClinic. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I hope you're doing well.
What should be my essentials so I can cook healthy foods? Example, types of oils, herbs and spices.
Well, those are really good staples to have in the cupboard. So things like dried beans and pulses are really good to have. Oils to have are olive oil. You could have avocado oil. You could try, if you use animal product, you could have ghee. Butter are really good to cook with because they're stable fats. Coconut oil is a really good one to have. Herbs and spices. Now, I'm a big fan of herbs and spices. They're medicinal. So things like oregano, basil, and oregano are brilliant because they're both antimicrobial, so really good for your immune system. Fresh rosemary is really great for the chest too, which is what everyone's worried about. And spices, like turmeric is really anti-inflammatory. You know, cumin is brilliant for the immune system. So they're really fantastic things to add into your diet, into your daily menu. You don't have to have rice. You can use buckwheat, which all those sort of less popular grains are sort of seem to be available. Things like buckwheat, you can make really nice risotto with buckwheat. So try those, and I would get whatever veg is available. You know, we're so used to going to the supermarket and getting whatever we want. What's interesting about it is actually it's forcing us to eat a little bit more seasonally, it seems, because the seasonal fruit and veg is more available. So actually go with that. That's what we're meant to eat, at this time of the year. Vinegars, like an apple cider vinegar. I use apple cider vinegar a lot. I also use Dijon mustard quite a lot. And I use lemon and lime in almost everything, and garlic. So if you've got garlic, onion, oil, then you'll be fine.
Rose, what are the foods that are really good for our skin?
So your berries are really good because they're high in antioxidants. A lot have got vitamin C, but they've got loads of other polyphenols in them, which are brilliant. They're antioxidants, so they help take out baddies that cause inflammation in the skin. So they would be number one. Then there are the orange vegetables like sweet potato, carrots, things like that. That beta carotene, which is a vegetable source of vitamin A, again, really important for the skin. Hydration is key. So making sure that you have enough hydration, whether that's from, water, coconut water, chia fresca, whatever you're drinking. If you don't like water, put some mint in it. So you're making sure you have good fats. So things like EPA and DHA, which you find in fish oil, so your omegas, but you can get things like avocados, nuts. So you really want those, because the fats are what makes cell membranes plump and sort of healthy. So then if they're well, then your skin will seem plumper because the cells are literally plumper inside. So that is what I would say to that. And also just eating a really high fiber, because the skin reflects what's going on in your detox pathways. So you want to make sure you're eating enough fiber that's helping eliminate. So fiber helps your elimination pathways through your colon and stuff. It helps you excrete stuff. So you want to make sure you're eating lots of whole grains, make sure you're eating lots of whole veg. It's high fruit, high veg, high water. And really good fats. That would be my recommendation.
I suffer badly with emotional binge eating due to PTSD. Do you have any tips?
I have to say I have yet to meet somebody who doesn't eat emotionally, even if it's on a smaller scale. Most people attach food to different things, whether they're feeling, even if it's feeling tired, or sugar craving is emotional eating. So don't worry. Everybody has a different scale of this. So obviously the first thing I would do is say that as a nutritionist, my responsibility is for your care. And I would say, do you have a counsellor? I'm hoping that if you've been diagnosed with PTSD that you do. Moving on from that, going on to foods that help. So we want to help your nervous system deal with the psychological, what's going on, your neurons and your neurotransmitters. So for that, we'd want to increase serotonin. We'd want to sort of decrease like acetylcholine, your stress pathways is what we want to decrease, and encourage like a calmness so that the nervous system isn't like. So for those things, we want to think about probably vitamin B complex supplement. We'd also really look at how you eat, when do you binge eat, and why, and do you have food in the house which allows that to happen? Do you have the bad foods like sugary foods or crisps, chocolates, sweets, ice cream? Do you have that in the house? And if you do have it in the house, perhaps you should think about having it not in the house. Also, then one of the big drivers I find for people binge eating, on top of the emotional stuff, is when they're hungry. So people will binge eat, then they will feel really bad, and then they won't eat. And then what happens is they don't eat, and then they are starving. And so what happens when you're starving? You will eat whatever you can find. And if that is also factored into the fact that you're suffering with PTSD, then it's kind of like a perfect storm. So my advice would be to make sure you eat really properly 3 times a day. If you want to snack in between those, then have some almonds or have a bit of avocado, something to take in hummus, something that's got a bit of substance to it so that it sort of satiates that hunger. And see how you get on with that and get your blood sugars stable, because while they're not stable, they will keep on this cycle of like.
Tell me about cooking oils and their pros and cons.
My rule of thumb is that if it's saturated, so therefore stable at room temperature, so aka solid at room temperature, then it's safer to cook with. So basically fat, when you cook it, when it's saturated, it means the bonds don't break because they're stable, they're really stable, so they're double bonded. If you cook with oils, those bonds break, depending which oil you're using at a higher heat point, and then they become difficult for the body to digest it. So to cook with, I would use coconut oil, is stable at room temperature, butter, if you have ghee, and those are the 3 that I cook with. Is that adding olive oil to your food after you've cooked it is a really good way of getting good fats in, or avocado oil. Those are the fats I use actually. Things like nut oils are really not great to cook with because they have a much lower heat point. The bonds break much cooler down. So those things you would add after, definitely.
What do you recommend to do after a long antibiotic course to help heal your gut?
First, I would go on a probiotic course without a shadow of doubt. I'm sure you know that, but I tell you which probiotic I would use in this case is a probiotic called Improve. It is a liquid, but it's a really thorough re-inoculation of your gut. It's a 12-week program, and I would definitely do that. And then on top of that, if you think you have a leaky gut, so if you're suffering with bloating, if you've changed, your digestion's changed, or your movements have changed, then I would look at a gut barrier repair powder. Things like glutamine or slippery elm are brilliant at healing your gut and helping the gut lining to repair after it's had some really strong medication.
I can't find flour or baking powder in any supermarkets. Do you have any alternative recipes to suggest, Rose?
Wassim has told me how frustrating it is because you can't find baking things like flour, baking powder, cream tartar, all the baking stuff. So I thought I would give you something that is easier to find. It's my cacao energy ball recipe, and the ingredients are much easier to find, it seems, at the moment. So this makes about 15 balls that are about that big, or maybe that big. So you need 200 grams of almonds, 400 grams of medjool dates, 4 tablespoons of raw cacao powder. If you can't get cacao powder, you could go with dark chocolate powder, dark chocolate powder. 2.5 tablespoons of almond butter and 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. So if you put them in a food processor, put the almonds and the dates in first, and then put in the coconut oil, cacao and almond butter, and you just blend it together. And then what you do is you get them and you just roll them into a little ball like that, roll, and you put them on baking trays and then put them in the fridge, and then they're there for you whenever you want them.
How do I cut out sugar? I always want biscuits with my tea, especially when I'm studying.
The thing with sugar is to remember that your taste buds change every 2 weeks. If you cut it out, your taste buds in 2 weeks' time, they will start changing after days, but in 2 weeks' time it will be a very different story of what you are wanting to eat. You have to get there though. And that, in my experience in clinic and with people, is actually just a self-discipline issue, which is easier said than done. There are things you can do to help. First of all, check that you are not suffering with something called candida, which is a yeast overgrowth. It's very, very common. It's not the only thing that can cause really extreme sugar cravings. But if you do have extreme sugar cravings, it's something you should have a look at, just because if that is what's going on, then then let's deal with that. If it's just sugar cravings and just because that's what you've been used to eating, make sure that you are full when you eat your meals, so you're not getting hungry and starving and then reaching for the wrong thing, which is a classic 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I have been really good all day and then it all goes, to pot. Make sure you're eating good fats. Fats are really good at keeping the blood sugar levels sort of more balanced. There are some nutrients you can use that will help. So things like chromium are really useful. Cinnamon is a great one. It's a great blood sugar balancer, so you could try that. But I would say, have some nuts around so that you can snack on something that's got substance to it. So, will help you stay away from that whatever chocolate cake at 4 o'clock. It's very addictive sugar, so just remember that you're battling quite a lot actually with it.
What's the best source of protein if you don't want to use animal sources?
Soy is a really good source, and I know that people get a bit worried about soy. I think you have to source it really well, and eating soy cheese, soy yogurt, all that crap is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about well-sourced, organic, fermented soy. So tempeh, tofu, miso, you can have some edamames. Also things like lentils are great, chickpeas, they're all high in protein, and then almonds, nuts and seeds have got a great amount, and they've got good fats too, so quite a nice combo. So those are the ones that I would use.
How do I keep weight off in lockdown? What about intermittent fasting?
The things that I would say, I would just definitely look at snacking, like really, really, really rein it in. So make sure you're eating properly when you eat, and then, let's not snack in between. As you get a bit older, if you're in your 20s and 30s, you might get away with it, but 30s, 40s, it's going to be all really unhelpful. I also think the other thing I did think about, and I have said quite a few times for this, is to start thinking about intermittent fasting. So if you don't intermittent fast, now would be a good time to do it. It was a really good way of keeping mindful about your food, keeps you on track, makes you feel positive, helps your gut, helps your brain fog. So I like a liquid day once a week is my intermittent fast. I sometimes do the 16-8, so I know that would be the other thing to do, that I would say 3 or 4 times a week to do 16-8, which is basically either missing a breakfast or dinner. It's a brilliant way to look after yourself and feel like you're doing something, taking care of yourself. And yeah, that's what I think. That would be my advice. And make sure you're eating fresh and whole grain wherever you can. I know sometimes it's not that easy at the moment. So that would be my advice.
Do I need to reduce my calorie intake since I'm more sedentary now than usual? I read somewhere it should be 500 calories less a day.
500 calories less a day. It depends. Obviously we all rush around all the time normally, but what I'm hearing are people are doing lots and lots more exercise than they normally would. So if you're doing lots of exercise that you normally didn't, then I would say that you're probably the same. I think probably people are eating more than they think they're eating, because they're sitting, as I said, they're in the 6 feet from your fridge plan. So probably grazing more than you normally would. If you are being completely sedentary and you're not doing anything else and you're literally sitting around watching TV, reading, working, whatever it is, then yeah, you won't need as many calories. So the quickest way to reduce calories are things like alcohol, fizzy drinks, bread is probably one, like bread. My kids have lots of jam and toast all day long, and that's, it's lovely, but if you're not doing anything, those are the things to miss. And probably to lean in a more protein, good fat sort of vibe instead of carbohydrates. So perhaps leave the carbohydrates after breakfast.